This is there in case you need it.
Thank you. I'm meant to come up with practice with the bowl. I've done it a couple of times, but it's never felt like a mastery. So I set my pants after I took it.
Yes.
Once I didn't. A couple of people told me about it. Not here.
Where it did happen, they forgot.
Yeah. We're sitting there chuckling right now. Remember I had those pants? I suspect Jason is enough of a pro that he knows when to stop. So we can start the service. There it goes. Good morning. My name is Tom Stites, and I am your worship associate today. If you're joining us for the first time, you're especially welcome. Please join us after the service for the coffee hour next door in the parish hall to the building on your right. Soup Sunday, I'm sad to announce, has had to be postponed due to a broken dishwasher, but I am told that I can assure you there will be lots of coffee. Ours is a non-creedal faith that is ever evolving, and we are a bustling congregation. So please, at the end of our worship, be sure to peruse our order of service to see what events might pique your interest. It is no small thing that we have gathered here this morning, so let us give ourselves to it. I welcome one and all to our church and our worship service. We have a special preacher this morning. The Reverend Stan Barrett is an affiliate minister of this church. He retired in December 2018 after 15 years as a hospice chaplain, visiting and supporting mostly nursing home patients and their families in areas north of Boston. Earlier, he was a pastoral counselor in private practice after local church ministry in the 1980s. He is enjoying having more time now for study and music making. Stan and his wife, Leslie Lawrence, have been members of FRS since 2002. They have 5 nieces and nephews, as well as 3 grandnieces and grandnephews, who are spread out among London, Chattanooga, Winston-Salem, and Oklahoma City, and they hope to have more time with them in the future. Stan and Leslie are also the proud parents of 2 Welsh Springer Spaniels, Keisha and Emma, soon to be 10 and 3, respectively. Thank you. It is good to be together.
A good friend of mine is of the opinion that one of the characteristics of childhood, which helps us understand why Jesus said that you must become like a child in order to enter the kingdom of heaven, is the readiness of children to engage their imaginations. Jesus would also have been familiar with the imaginative words of the 55th chapter of the book of Isaiah. For you shall go out in joy and be led back in peace. The mountains and the hills before you shall burst into song, and all the trees of the field shall clap their hands. So, with the mountains and the hills, with the trees, and with the plants which before we know it shall be bursting forth from the earth and reaching for the stars, with the whole of creation in its song, you are, with all seriousness yet playfully, called to worship.
At this time, I would like to invite forward Bettina Turner and Ray Wilson, who will light our chalice and candles of peace.
The words for the chalice lighting are printed in the order of service. Please join us in saying them together. We gather this hour as people of faith, with joys and sorrows, gifts and needs. We light this beacon of hope, sign of our quest for truth and meaning in celebration of the life we share together.
Each week, we also light 2 candles of peace, representing 2 places on earth that we lift up and remember as a sacred encounter with our world. There are an untold number of places on earth that need peace. These 2 we especially hold close in this service and through the week ahead, and both are places that suffer subtle but relentless violence from powerful people and governments. After each candle is lit, we will speak the words for peace in English, Arabic, and Hebrew. Peace, salam, shalom. Our first candle is lit for the oil and diamond-rich West African nation of Angola, where a kleptocratic ruling family amassed billions while its people remain among the poorest on earth. Angola's average life expectancy is only 60, a dozen years less than the global average. The new regime has taken power and is trying to regain some of the errant billions. May the new leaders reject corruption and bring health and prosperity to the long-suffering Angolan people, who through the centuries have been a huge source of slaves, subjects of Portuguese colonialism, victims of a long and brutal civil war, and after liberation, being stolen blind by kleptocrats. Peace, salam, shalom. Our second candle is lit for Australia, which not only is ravaged by bushfires, but is also the world's leading exporter of coal, a major source of the greenhouse gases that cause climate change, which in turn creates conditions that feed the wildfires at home and damage the entire world. Australia's Prime Minister is a climate change denier who has been working hard to further increase coal exports. May his nation's tragic experience bring him to his senses. Peace, salam, shalom.
Please rise in body or in spirit. We will be singing together number 36, When in Our Music God is Glorified. Remain standing afterwards for our unison affirmation of faith and the doxology. Now please join in our affirmation of faith. The words are printed in your order of service. Love is the doctrine of this church, and the quest of truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve humankind in fellowship, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with the divine. Thus do we covenant with each other and with God. Please be seated.
I would like to invite forward all of our children and youth who are with us this morning. Careful, because things are not quite the way they are arranged on the altar most Sundays. And in the process of inviting the youth and children forward, I have invited forward the presenter of today's Time for All Ages, Jake Raybould.
This is Patty Ann Rabbit. She belonged to my mom when she was a little girl, and she is older than all of you. You can tell that she isn't brand new. She has been well loved. Do any of you have a lovey or stuffed animal that you love and sleep with, that you tell your secrets to and feels real? Your dog? Your turtle? Aw. Your bear? Your cat? Oh, your frog. Your monkey. When I was little, my mom read me a story about a stuffed animal who was loved and became real. It's called the Velveteen Rabbit. 2 years ago, I had the opportunity to play the Velveteen Rabbit in a show at the Boston Children's Theater, and I'd like to share this story with you today. A stuffed rabbit, sewn from velveteen, is given as a Christmas present to a small boy. The boy plays with his other new presents and forgets the Velveteen Rabbit for a time. These presents are modern and mechanical, and they snub the old-fashioned Velveteen Rabbit. The wisest and oldest toy in the nursery, the Skin Horse, is very kind to the Velveteen Rabbit. The Skin Horse had lived longer in the nursery than any of the others. He was so old that his brown coat was bald in patches and showed the seams underneath, and most of the hairs in his tail had been pulled out to string bead necklaces. He was wise, for he had seen a long succession of mechanical toys arrive to boast him swagger, and by break their mainsprings and pass away. And he knew that they were only toys, and would never turn into anything else. For nursery magic is very strange and wonderful, and only those playthings that are old and wise and experienced, like the Skin Horse, understand all about it. "What is real?" asked the rabbit one day. "Does it mean having things inside you that buzz and a stick-out handle?" "Real isn't how you are made," said the Skin Horse. "It's a thing that happens to you. When a child loves you for a long, long time, not just to play with, but truly loves you, then you become real." "Does it hurt?" asked the rabbit. "Sometimes," said the Skin Horse, for he was always truthful. "When you are real, you don't mind being hurt." "Does it happen all at once, like being wound up?" he asked, "or bit by bit?" "It doesn't happen all at once," said the Skin Horse. "You become. It takes a long time. That's why it doesn't happen often to people who break easily, or have sharp edges, or who have to be carefully kept. Generally, by the time you are real, most of your hair has been loved off, and your eyes drop out, and you get loose in the joints and very shabby. But these things don't matter at all, because once you are real, you can't be ugly, except to people who don't understand." "I suppose you are real," said the rabbit. "The boy's uncle made me real. That was a great many years ago, but once you are real, you can't become unreal again. It lasts for always." The rabbit sighed. He thought it would be a long time before this magic called real happened to him. He longed to become real, to know what it felt like, and yet the idea of growing shabby and losing his eyes and whiskers was rather sad. He wished that he could become it without these uncomfortable things happening to him. Then, one night, the boy's nana gives the rabbit to the boy to sleep with, in place of a lost toy. The rabbit becomes the boy's favorite toy, enjoying picnics with him in the spring, and the boy tells the rabbit that he is real. Time passes, and the rabbit becomes shabbier and shabbier, but happy. He meets some real rabbits in the summer, and they learn that he cannot hop as they do, and say that he is not a real rabbit. One day, the boy comes down with scarlet fever, and the rabbit sits with him as he recovers. The doctor orders that the boy should be taken to the seaside, and that his room should be disinfected, and all his books and toys burnt, including the Velveteen Rabbit. The rabbit is bundled into a sack and left out in the garden overnight, where he sadly reflects on his life with his boy. The toy rabbit cries, a real tear drops on the ground, and a marvelous flower appears. A fairy steps out of the flower and comforts the Velveteen Rabbit, introducing herself as the nursery magic fairy. She says that because he has become real to the boy who truly loves him, she will take him away with her and turn him into real for everyone. The fairy takes the rabbit to the forest, where she meets the other rabbits and gives the Velveteen Rabbit a kiss. The Velveteen Rabbit changes into a real rabbit and joins the other rabbits in the forest. The next spring, the rabbit returns to look at the boy, and the boy sees a resemblance to his old Velveteen Rabbit. But he never knew that it really was his own bunny, come back to look at the child who had first helped him to be real. And as you leave today, I invite you to consider that what is real to someone else might not be the same as what is real to you, but to them, it is just as special. Thank you.
And as the kids go to their classes, we will sing number 413, Go Now in Peace.
Maybe I should have, but it didn't work.
Go now in peace, go now in peace. May the smoke of God surround you everywhere, everywhere you may go. The January collection for a cause goes to Community Service of Newburyport. Community Service supports a food pantry, clothing, emergency relief, and referral services for people in need in Newburyport, Newbury, and West Newbury. In addition, they run the holiday gift bag program for children and seniors. And in the summer, they provide 2 weeks of summer camp for deserving children. As an act of worship, the offering will now be gratefully received. This is the time in our service each week when we lift up joys and sorrows from within our beloved congregation. Anne McRae's son, Marco, is going in for lung surgery for a tumor on February 3rd. She asks that you hold them in your hearts, as this congregation has so kindly in the past. And we remember all the joys and concerns upon your hearts, though unspoken, that are held just as dearly.
I invite you to a brief meditation. I'll guide you into it, and then allow a minute or so of silence for the meditation to continue, and conclude with some words of prayer. Please begin by being as relaxed as you can where you sit, and close your eyes if that helps you to go inward. Now allow to come into your awareness a book, a painting, a sculpture, or some other work of art which at some point sparked your imagination and led you to think new thoughts, feel in unfamiliar ways, dream new dreams. Or maybe for you, it will be a person who comes to mind, someone who inspired you to live more imaginatively, dare what you previously wouldn't have dared. Now notice how this memory arrives for you. Notice what you're seeing, what you're hearing. Or you may primarily access the memory by a feeling in your chest or your belly, or by the fact that this book or painting made you want to stand up and shout, or this person made you laugh. Spend some time exploring and savoring all the ways you experienced this imagination-inspiring person or work of art and are experiencing them now. Holy One, Great Spirit, breathe through our imaginings this day. Make them fruitful for our hearts and minds, productive of restoration and growth. By them enliven us, strengthen and encourage us, and humble us when that is what we need. Through them, make us vehicles of healing and hope for those we love, our church, our community, and our world. Amen.
We have one reading for you this morning. These words are by Catherine Rundell from her book, Why You Should Read Children's Books, Even Though You Are So Old and Wise. Children's fiction offers to help us refine things that we may not know even that we have lost. Adult life is full of forgettings. I have forgotten most of the people I ever met. I have forgotten most of the books I have ever read, even the ones that have changed me forever. I've forgotten most of my epiphanies, and I've forgotten at various times in my life how to read, how to lay aside skepticism and fashion and trust myself to a book. At the risk of sounding like a mad optimist, children's fiction can reteach you how to read with an open heart. When you read children's books, you are given the space to read again as a child, to find your way back to the time when new discoveries came daily and when the world was colossal, before your imagination was trimmed and neatened as if it were an optional extra. But imagination is not and never has been optional. It is at the heart of everything, the thing that allows us to experience the world from the perspective of others, the conditioned precedent of love itself. It was Edmund Burke who first used the term moral imagination in 1790, the ability of ethical perception to step beyond the limits of the fleeting events of each moment and beyond the limits of private experience. For that, we need books that are specifically written to feed the imagination, which give heart and mind a galvanic kick. Children's books. Children's books can teach us not just what we have forgotten, but what we have forgotten, we have forgotten. Please rise now in body or spirit and join together in our next hymn, number 338, I Seek the Spirit of a Child.
I invite you to let the choir sing to you the first verse and to join in on verses 2 and 3.
A child who sees delight. Please be seated. At this point in the service, after that wonderful retelling of the Velveteen Rabbit and the reading from Catherine Rundle's little book, Why You Should Read Children's Books, Even Though You're So Old and Wise, I'd understand if you expected the sermon to be about children's literature. Well, it's not. But that is a great place to start, a great preparation for talking about imagination, which is my focus today. Because, as Rundle tells us, children's books, quote, books specifically written to feed the imagination, give the heart and mind a galvanic kick, end quote. Perhaps a galvanic, electrifying kick can induce us to take a fresh look at a subject whose importance to us adults we may have underestimated. Apart from its association in our minds with the creative arts, and perhaps product design and engineering problem solving, imagination most often connotes for us a flight from reality, a conjuring of a desired or definitely undesired outcome, an outcome which reality testing suggests is unlikely to occur. On the one hand, this is exemplified in the Temptations' rendition of the love song, I bet you remember it, "It was just my imagination running away with me." It's a song, so you have to repeat it. It was just my imagination running away with me. There you go. On the other hand, a tendency to be engrossed in an imagined but unlikely negative outcome is depicted by a friend of mine who relates that his sister's husband says of her that, quote, she lives in the ruins of the future. She lives in the ruins of the future. Of course, imagination can be an escape from reality. My intention today, however, is to suggest that imagination, like love in the Velveteen Rabbit, can move us toward reality instead of away from it. I want to lift up the possibility that imagination can facilitate our finding of our truth, can enable our being more fully who we are, or can be, as individuals, as a church, as a society, as a world. Imagination, like love, can make us real, and not just in children's fiction. But let me pull back briefly from lofty intentions and talk about what imagination most basically is. I want to ground myself and you in sensory perception, sensory experience, and starting from the presence of image at the core of the word imagination, suggests that imagination is discovering or creating within ourselves an image not currently available to our outer senses. It may be a person, place, thing, scene, or situation from the past, which is no longer present to our outer senses, but which we remember in inner imagining. For example, a family holiday dinner from long ago. It may be an image of something contemporaneous in time, but distant in space, such as a meeting I can't be present for. It may be an image of the future. For example, the embrace of someone you hope to develop a relationship with, or my friend's sister's reportedly habitual negative images of the future. I think it's important to add that an image need not be visual or only visual. The recall of a family dinner may well include the smell of the turkey just lifted from the oven. My primary image of the ongoing meeting I can't attend may be my boss's voice. And being reunited with someone you love or coming together for the first time with someone you are attracted to may be visual, but may be an anticipation of what they will feel like in your arms. An example from music history is Beethoven's composition of those amazing and revolutionary works from his late period, when he was substantially, if not totally, deaf. What a testimony to auditory imagination. There's another level at which imagination operates, which has less to do with the image of the thing itself and more to do with the use we make of it. our relationship with it, the meaning we make of it, how we understand its context, how we map the territory of our lives. For example, the first step in what today is most commonly called repurposing something is likely to be reimagining its use. Or, if you and I want to improve our relationship, it's likely to involve imagining how we might be with each other more productively, treat one another better, conceive of our connection differently. Another example comes to me as the father or owner of a newly blind dog. That's Keisha, as recommended, as you heard her name in the introduction. A newly blind dog. She's exploring the territory of her life without the aid of vision, and with our help, remapping that landscape. She's reimagining her world. At a far remove from such close-to-experience examples is how astrophysicists raise questions about the composition and context of our universe with speculations, we might as well call them imaginings, about wormholes and string theory and parallel universes and what it's like beyond the event horizon of black holes. These are imaginings with a basis in observation and subject to being either confirmed or falsified by further observation. But imaginings they are nevertheless, and examples of the crucial role of imagination in the advancement of science. Reaching these celestial realms, though, not only highlights scientific matters, it also brings us face to face with life's great mysteries, mysteries which often arise as questions like, who and what are we? And what is the largest context of our lives, the largest stage on which our life is set? Are we children of God? Specks of dust in a universe of universes connected by so-called wormholes? Both? If, as some suggest, beyond the event horizon of black holes from which even light can't escape, matter is so dense and gravity essentially infinite that time and space do not exist there, if that's the case, is this where God lives, to speak imaginatively? After all, a reality beyond time and space begins to sound like a traditional description of God. It is my belief that in considering the great mysteries of life, imagination is not only helpful, it is vital. When we wonder about the core mysteries like self and other, God and love, we need not only to be serious, it behooves us also to allow ourselves to be imaginative. Without imagination and wondering about the central mysteries of existence, it's easy to get caught in a cul-de-sac or a box canyon. A box canyon, according to Merriam-Webster online, is, quote, a canyon with approximately vertical walls and typically closed upstream with a similar wall. In other words, there's usually only one way in and out of a box canyon, and if you want to go forward, you're stuck, or so it seems. Author Barry Lopez, interviewed in the December issue of The Sun magazine, uses being in a box canyon as a metaphor for getting stuck or trapped. He's a scuba diver as well and makes good use of that experience here. He says that on land, when you're in a box canyon, you look from side to side, see those vertical walls, and know you can't rise out like a bird. However, and I quote, if you enter a box canyon as a diver, you can just rise up in the water column and swim on, end quote. You can rise toward the surface, that is, until you're above the rim of the canyon and continue moving forward in the water. On land, functionally, you just have two dimensions, but underwater, you have a vertical dimension as well, and that's your way out. Without that added dimension, we see a boundary. With it, we see a horizon. A boundary, claims Lopez, says, here and no further. A horizon says, welcome. In solving problems beyond the exit from a literal box canyon, Lopez sees imagination as providing the vertical dimension. It is imagination which enables us to rise up in the water column and swim on. To quote him again, the creative effort of the imagination is to turn a boundary into a horizon. Then it's possible to say, let's go there and there and there, because there's no limit to you. Imagination, Lopez coaches us, provides your vertical dimension. I think we easily get stuck in box canyons as we frame our, at least tentative, answers to the big questions, as we live with the big mysteries. We so easily see boundaries, and we so need imagination to help us see horizons. From one point of view, the greatest mystery is God, in monotheistic traditions typically thought of as the source and sustainer of all things. Another way to name this great mystery is to speak of ultimate reality. Muhyiddin ibn al-Arabi was an older contemporary of Jalaluddin Rumi, and with Rumi, one of the high peaks in the history of Islamic Sufi spirituality and literature. Ibn al-Arabi maintained that God creates the universe and all that is in it through the vehicle of imagination, and that in turn, it is through imagination that we come to know God, or ultimate reality. What this contributes to our discussion, I think, is the suggestion that in our coming to terms with what is ultimate for us, imagination is our friend in maturity as well as in childhood. We need richer imagination, not less of it, to do justice to what heart and mind and experience demand of us in framing our understanding of ultimate reality and our relationship to it. If the image of God as a grandfatherly figure somewhere up there is inadequate, as surely it is for most of us, well, many of us, and not just women, have felt enriched by incorporating female images of the divine into our understanding, as in the UU curriculum, Cakes for the Queen of Heaven. If images of God as love fail to satisfy us in the face of destructive parts of creation such as earthquakes, volcanoes, and hurricanes, well, the Hindu tradition offers us Kali, goddess of death, time, and destruction, but also an archetype of protective mother love. If a personal God of any sort doesn't capture your sense of the ultimate, science provides us with the image of the Big Bang and the similar phenomenon of black holes, realities which create, organize, evolve, and destroy at a cosmic scale. Another sort of divine image is the God of process theology, of which Reverend Rebecca spoke a few weeks ago, a God which is to be found not so much outside of time and space and creation, as in the midst of them, with us. Any and all and more, or none of these, might be helpful to each of us in grappling with our sense of the ultimate. On the other hand, any image or combination of images can constitute for us a box canyon, a stuck place. Surely there are cul-de-sacs of belief and of unbelief, box canyons in our relationship with ultimate reality as we understand it. From beyond these dead ends, sometimes heart or mind or experience call us out, pointing there and there and there, inviting us to turn a boundary into a horizon. In our sense of ultimate reality and who we are in relationship to it, we need imagination to help us rise up in the water column and swim on. And what of the mystery of the self? The question of who and what the human is, and what is the extent of our potential. To use a rough spatial metaphor, surely inner space is as much a mystery as outer space. Let me give just one example of a possible box canyon in our self-understanding and our need for imagination in order to rise above it. Various religious traditions testify to a peak human experience which is deeply transformative and has the feeling of ultimacy about it, a feeling of being at the peak of peaks. It can bring a sense of being at one with everything, of being reunited with one's deepest self or one's source, a deep sense of relief, release or freedom, or a sense of resolution of life's big riddles. In Buddhism, this is called enlightenment. In the broader Far Eastern context, it is known as moksha or satori. In Islam, it is known as becoming a friend of God. In Christianity, it is sometimes referred to as union with God. Such an experience may seem to you, as sometimes it does to me, to belong to children's literature. It can seem as distant from our reality as encountering the cherubim named Progenoskis in Madeleine L'Engle's young adult novel, A Wind in the Door. We can laugh easily or uneasily at jokes like the one about the Buddhist who goes up to the hot dog vendor in Brooklyn and says, "Make me one with everything." Yet the testimony of many ages and cultures, including our own, is that such an experience is part of what it can mean to be fully human. Have we, unnecessarily and to our detriment, snipped and neatened our imagination, to use Catherine Rundle's expression, if this is not part of our worldview? What about the mystery of the other? Sooner or later in almost all relationships, the gap between my perceptions and experiences and yours becomes evident. And we feel strange to each other, with even communication across what seems like an abyss turning out to be distressingly difficult. Here, but also in the apparently easy relating and communicating of a relatively smooth relationship, so always then in relationships, we use and we need imagination. In today's reading, Catherine Rundle cites Edmund Burke in 1790 on moral imagination. That is, quote, "the ability of ethical perception to step beyond the fleeting events of each moment and beyond the limits of private experience." The ability of ethical perception to step beyond the fleeting events of each moment and beyond the limits of private experience. Rundle says it is imagination which allows this experiencing of the world from the perspective of others. Imagination is the bridge over which we cross into each other's experience. When we scale up from one-to-one relationships and consider changes we desire for our congregation, community, nation, and world, imagination is equally important. In fact, the context of Barry Lopez's thoughts about box canyons and imagination, introduced earlier, was an interview question about climate change and destruction and the hopelessness many feel about it. The interviewer notes that Lopez has said elsewhere that it will take, quote, "an unprecedented level of imagination to confront," end quote, our environmental crises. I think we can say more broadly about grappling with issues of peace and justice, inclusion and welcome, as well as global warming and its consequences, that without imagination, we will be hard-pressed to rise up in the water column and continue forward. Without imagination, we could easily be caught in the cul-de-sac of fear or hopelessness. It is the voice of imagination that says there and there and there, suggesting ways forward. It is with imagination that we can turn boundaries into horizons. So let us finish this magical mystery tour with a return to love. Who is not moved by the skin horse's lesson to the Velveteen Rabbit, that love can make you real? I don't know about velveteen rabbits, but I do know that humans can love each other well enough. It becomes safe to be who we most deep down are. Such love is surely as big a mystery as the biggest of them. And Catherine Rundle says that love depends on imagination, or to put it differently, that imagination precedes love and is a necessary condition for it. Her words are that imagination is, quote, "the condition precedent of love itself." I suspect she means that in order to know someone well enough, even to begin to love them, we must somehow cross over into what it's like to be them. And for that, imagination is our bridge. If imagination can be such a bridge for us, a bridge to love, to ultimate reality, to our deepest and truest selves, to each other, and to paths toward the kind of world we seek, then I say, Let's have more of it. Just imagine. Please rise in body or in spirit and join in our final hymn, number 1014 in the Teal hymn book, called Answering the Call of Love.
We had the chance to learn this a couple of weeks ago, and now is a wonderful opportunity to build on that learning or to share the song for the first time. In the hymnal, you will see the original words are standing on the side of love, and the composer, Jason Shelton, has invited us to revise these words with his words, answering the call of love. We're all going to make a mistake at least once. I encourage you to try again.
Is that working? Oh, good. Yeah. There are different ways to talk about what a blessing is, but my favorite these days, I heard from a friend, for years a fellow hospice chaplain and an ex-Roman Catholic priest. He said that to bless someone is to speak well of them. I think we can turn that around and say to speak well of someone is to bless them. So, with your permission, I want to bless you this morning. You are a people of spirit. You are full of potential to be even more permeable to spirit. You are so able to imagine and reimagine many things about your life, some aspect of your life, your world. And you are able, filled with spirit, enabled by imagination, and supported by each other to make a difference. You are. You just are. Know that, and knowing that, go out in peace and return with great joy. Amen.